who doesn't love a good beer? Cold, delicious, endless in variety. And in all of American history, there's never been a greater time than now to truly experience beer in all its forms. The craft renaissance, it has been called, and it is a movement that shows no signs of slowing down. But how did we find ourselves in such a renaissance? As with any revolution, the recent craft beer movement hasn't occurred in a vacuum, but rather it's dependent on a spectrum of forces and networks that work together to make delicious brews like this Red Hare Sticky Stout possible. So where do we begin our examination of the sea of forces that influence the world of craft beer? Well, Dr. Jeff Rice, professor of writing, rhetoric, and digital media studies at the University of Kentucky, stated in his essay Craft Networks that, quote, craft fashions in a world outside of industrialization, favoring the handmade and the artist over the impersonal, mass-produced object. With this idea in mind, the focus on the artist within the craft movement, our look at craft beer must begin with the brewer, and the story behind the brewer begins at the home. Homebrewing beer is one of the primary aspects that sets craft beer apart, as it blurs the line between consumer and producer, allowing anyone who enjoys drinking beer to get in on the action of brewing it.
Me and a few friends started homebrewing, trying to make stuff that we thought would be neat that you can't get on the market here. And that's really how I started.
Whether it be social, experimental, or therapeutic, homebrewing allows beer drinkers everywhere the opportunity to play an active role in the evolution of the drink they love. But, just as with any hobby, homebrewing requires its own education. For this education, many turn to fellow brewers and homebrewing clubs.
When I first started homebrewing, there were a few, they're still around, guys who have been homebrewing for decades, literally decades. And you're sitting there and you make this beer, and then everybody gets together once a month, and you have 30 guys just sharing all this other stuff. And you get feedback from them about your beer, and then also you try their beer and be like, holy crap, this tastes delicious, what did you do? And you kind of learn through osmosis that way.
This sort of face-to-face guidance is fitting of beer's traditionally present mentality. But it doesn't have to be that way. With the rise of social media, online communities have grown on sites like Rate Beer, Reddit, and Homebrew Talk, where fellow homebrewers read articles, trade advice, ask questions, discuss hardware, and even workshop recipes. For many, these resources are not only invaluable while they learn the ropes, but readily available, as they have been immersed in the social media of craft beer long before they ever picked up a home brewing kit. Sites such as Untappd and Rate Beer have been around for years, serving as a place where beer lovers can meet, discuss the beers they're drinking, find beers to look for next, and even check what's on tap at the local craft bar. While many see this new movement of craft beer and social media as an exciting development in the rich social history of beer, others see it as a logical progression, ushered in by a new generation of drinkers. John Cochran of Terrapin Brewing in Athens, Georgia, spoke to the digital marketing company Digital Relativity about this new generation. Last year, on a flight to Denver, Cochran described in the interview, I was seated next to a 17-year-old who, upon seeing my Terrapin beer t-shirt, started raving about how much he loved Terrapin. Figuring he must have learned about Terrapin from his parents, I introduced myself to them. They had never heard of us. Unlike previous generations who had to learn craft beer as the Renaissance progressed, new drinkers of the day entered the world of alcoholic beverages with the craft beer market ripe for exploration. They are starting out with craft beer and sticking with us, Cochran noted. And just as naturally, this love for craft beer has become a part of their online presence. This new generation is obviously growing up with social media, and craft beer is their beer of choice. It is within this combination of forces that creates the true value of these online spaces.
Obviously was limited, despite Shirky's claim that in social media spaces like Rate Beer and his example of Wikipedia, quote, the desire to make a meaningful contribution, unquote, generates an overall shared knowledge.
This desire to contribute to the shared experience allows sites like Rate Beer to be a one-stop shop for accurate, relevant, up-to-date information for new and veteran drinkers alike. But the craft beer community isn't solely confined to these specialized sites.
Between things like Untappd, which is that social relationship app, between something as simple as Instagram and Facebook and Twitter already, because they're all integrated together and they're all associated with just general marketing, which beer is very, very involved in.
Which brings us back to the craft brewer. For the few that choose to take their passion of home brewing and make it a career, understanding social media can make the difference between serving the masses and closing their doors. As Cochran explained to Digital Relativity, craft brewers are, quote, a group of mostly small business owners. We do not have the funds for traditional marketing. Instead, all of our promoting is one-on-one with the customer, which is exactly why so many brewers are using social media. It is a new way of having one-on-one communication with lots of people at once. Understanding this new media approach to advertising is especially important for brewers like John Neer, whose Southern Sky Brewing in Kennesaw, Georgia is fighting for relevance in only its first year of operation.
It's a lot of social media, it's a lot of Facebook, it's a lot of that kind of stuff, where you start reaching people that you're not in everyday contact with, and then typically from there it's the hardcore fans, the hardcore followers who retweet your stuff, who like your stuff on Instagram, who reshare your stuff on Facebook. Then they start reaching their friends, and it kind of snowballs from there.
Using social media in this way, a new brewer can get the word out about his beers to a larger audience than they would ever be able to reach on their own. But getting your beer to the people relies on much more than just exposure.
New from overnight, look at the more than 100 people who lined up to be a part of Georgia beer history as of mid.
Despite being over 80 years since Prohibition, state and regional alcohol regulations have profound effect on craft brewers' ability to sell to the public. Here in Georgia, recent years have seen a strong push towards reform of these regulations. One such reform was 2015 Senate Bill 63, or the Beer Jobs Bill. Sponsored by Senator Hunter Hill, the bill allowed brewers to sell directly to the public by way of charging for tours. These tour packages would then come with a souvenir of up to 36 ounces of beer for on-premise consumption and up to 72 ounces to take home. It was a huge victory for the Georgia craft industry, but the fight was far from over.
New at 6, Georgia breweries say the Department of Revenue's recent rules for breweries goes against everything they'd fought for and now could cost them thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they told
In September, 4 months after passing SB 63, the Department of Revenue issued a bulletin that many claimed went against the very intentions of the bill. Whereas many thought the new bill would allow breweries a backdoor to sell their product, the bulletin specifies that, while they may vary tour prices, they, quote, may not vary tour prices in such a way that the tour prices are clearly and directly tied to the market value of the alcohol furnished.
Georgia has allowed our state to become a poster child for overtaxation and overregulation.
We did all this fighting, and then they're just taking it all away.
It was like a sock in the gut.
Needless to say, people weren't happy. I decided to reach out to one of the bill's biggest supporters, State Representative Brett Harrell, for some clarification on the issue. And what he said. The representative told me that while yes, the DOR bulletin clarified aspects of SB 63 that prevents direct beer sales of any kind, it in no way went against the integrity of the new law. In fact, not only are the DOR not against craft reform, they are reportedly within months of issuing another bulletin that will give further freedom to brewers. So why such a reaction from craft brewers? Well, Representative Harrell summed it up perfectly with 2 words. That's politics. Craft brewers in the state of Georgia are not waging war with misguided state officials or wholesaler lobbyists, as the papers will tell you, but rather Georgia law itself. Coming out of Prohibition, Georgia set up a 3-tiered distribution system for alcohol sales in which producers must sell exclusively to wholesalers who then distribute their product. The system was put in place in order to assure variety in the marketplace and prevent large corporations from gaining a monopoly. What the system didn't account for was the recent boom in craft brewing. Everyone agrees that a change must be made, but unfortunately our governmental infrastructure is set up in such a way that this change must come slowly and systematically. Unsure if they can survive this wait, and knowing the passion with which their customers support their brands, Georgia Brewers, led by the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, has used this bulletin to begin social media campaigns in order to pressure state officials to speed up the process. And the campaign is working. As I speak, Representative Ron Stevens is pushing a bill through the House that would not only allow brewers to sell their product on site, but also sell food and even open up 4 additional tap rooms. Although this governmental fight has never been us against them, these calls to action and the resulting community support has created bigger push for pro-brewer reform than has ever been seen in this state. And it's only fitting, really. Craft beer has always just been about the community.
It's a really fun, fostering community. People are excited. We do a lot to try and interact with the people and engage the folks in our community, and they reciprocate by buying our beer.
It is the community that allows craft brewers to exist, and many show recognition by giving back.
If you look at Abita, they have a beer called Restoration, which we have on tap right now, and it's like $1 out of every beer sold from that keg still goes to helping Katrina. And for 10 years later,
this charitable spirit then bleeds over to the many businesses that serve the craft beer community. A perfect example of the good a craft beer business can do in a community is the Lincoln Fill Station in the quiet town of Snellville, Georgia. When the Growler Shop opened its doors in July of 2014, Snellville was much better known for its conservative city laws than good beer. In the years since, however, the Lincoln has become a significant meeting place within the town, as well as a hub for community events. When not catering concerts and festivals on the city green, they host numerous tap takeovers and festivals, all of which include raffles and contests that raise money for causes like a local breast cancer group, as well as the Explorer program at the city police department. And that right there is what's so beautiful about those in the craft beer industry. It's not just about making a paycheck for them, it's about making connections.
The beer experience is one of trying to add continuity to it all. We want to make everyone come here to find the emotion that is connected to drinking and enjoying beer.
It's a very personal vibe, and they get to know your name, and they get to know you personally, and what you like, what you dislike, stuff like that.
It's a group experience as well, and it's not only a way to bring one individual happiness from finding something that they enjoy, and the whole experience in itself, because it is a lot of fun, but it's also about going back to the community side of it, getting a group of people involved.
That and everybody here just loves freaking beer.
It's that age-old comment that, it's a beautiful thing to see other people appreciating your passion.
Where people on purpose walk into this place and without judgment, without regard for how long you've been drinking beer, how much beer, or what kind of beer you like, you come here for the purpose of enjoying it and learning a little bit about it.
It is fun to see, people that don't really know about it and get them introduced to it being craft beer.
They know the local brews, they know the local companies. They work hand in hand with local breweries.
Whenever I have 8 strangers at the bar that are 1 or 2 seats apart from each person, introducing person A to person B to person C, and getting the conversation involved with everyone.
It's all about getting the conversation started. And whether it's through brewing, tweets, letters to your local representative, or simply sharing a pint with a friend, that conversation is far from over. Cheers. Last thing I've been asking everybody is, what's your favorite thing about craft beer?
Just how diverse it is.
Being a part of it.
My favorite thing about craft beer is, unlike a lot of other booze-related communities, be it a wine bar or a whiskey bar, I find a very high level of camaraderie and fraternity in craft beer.
The different flavors that you can pull by just using, hops, grain, water, and then this little bug called yeast.
I'm a piece of a bomb before it explodes.
It's a beautiful drink. I love it.